to share some of the experiences and good practices from the project. So I thank you everyone for your participation. This webinar will go for slightly over 1 hour. And to start with, may I request Stella for the opening prayer. Stella, please.
Thank you, Saril. Greeting everyone. My name is Stella Wanjao from ADRA, Kenya. Let's have a word of prayer. Our Father and our God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you this day for the gift of life and for this wonderful sharing opportunity. We pray that you bless each and every person present in this meeting. Lord, you promise that when we seek your face with all our hearts, we will find you, and that's why we are calling upon your name. Send your Holy Spirit to be our guide and give us the wisdom to understand every presentation and discussion as you renew and refresh our minds. We commit the meeting in your hands and pray that you have your way according to your will, since it's only you who can see in perfect details the end of every beginning. We pray for the meeting to be successful and productive. And in Jesus' name we pray and trust. Amen.
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 Thank you, Stella. Then I request James Estelford, County Director for ADRA Kenya, to briefly give his remark, because he was with ADRA Canada before and now with ADRA Kenya. So he has experience from both sides of the globe.
Thank you, Dr. Salil. I wasn't expecting to make any remarks today, hoping to just quietly listen. But this project is something that's been very dear to my heart. And if you could see inside my office, you would be able to notice that on the walls are some pictures from this project. Now, when I say project, really, we're talking about a series of projects. And our leaders right now may want to be focusing on rare. But for these remarks, let me just say that this is an example of what ADRA does best. I think I noticed that there are some colleagues from ADRA Mongolia also on. And I often refer to the experience with ADRA Mongolia and ADRA Kenya and ADRA Canada as having something in common. Most importantly is that there have, in both cases, been a series of projects, not just one year, 2 year, 3 year project, but an engagement with the community that has lasted 10, 12 or more years. And that, in my experience in ADRA, is when we are really able to accomplish something, when we're able to change the space between the ears, when we're able to make an effective change in culture. That doesn't happen in a 9-month project. It happens when there's a long-term engagement. And it illustrates also what we do best in ADRA, which is moving from relief to development. So many of our projects around the world start in a relief phase. But then if we're fortunate, we're able to get the right funding mix, we can continue that relationship on with the community. So here what we have in Mandera West, which is, if you imagine a piece of paper, and if you look at the top right side of your piece of paper, that would be the map of Kenya. Mandera West is up there on the top right side of the country. This started back when there was the Horn of Africa famine. And initially, with the support of the Canadian Food Grains Bank and ADRA Canada, there was some relief efforts, handing out food to people who were in severe need. Of course, because it was ADRA, already there was some idea of how to make this culturally appropriate and to link it into development initiatives. Fortunately, the funding continued. More projects were written, but they were still all based in the same area. And the initiative moved from just handing out food to helping people to grow food for themselves in this arid, semi-arid country. and therefore to be able to change their lives. Significant because these are pastoralist people who have traditionally relied on a meat-based diet. Their goats and other animals are what provided their nutrition. Because they were pastoralists also, they're culturally used to traveling great distances, crossing the border into Ethiopia once or twice a year to find fodder for their animals. So therefore, the project also evolved into looking at not just how to grow a kitchen garden, but how to grow fodder for the animals, which are still very integral to the community, and ensuring that the community could be more stable in one place, which also allowed for social services, schooling, medical services, and so forth to take place. Whatever you hear about the objectives of this project, RARE, and any of the preceding projects, like all good projects that ADRA does, there were the unintended consequences, which fortunately were very beneficial. And what happened significantly in this area was the empowerment of women. Because women who were running their little kitchen gardens were also discovering that they could sell some of the extra produce for cash. I've talked with women who, for the first time in their lives, actually had money in their hands that they got to control, not the man of the house. And consequently, as we all know in ADRA, because women are concerned about family and community, that money was spent very often in education, health, maybe a few dollars or shillings to the man to have the odd drink or two, but significantly the money went to the family. So that empowerment of the women in the community has been, to me, a significant aspect. So the growth, the evolution from a purely relief handout came to be something where people were growing enough food for 3 meals a day, not perhaps one, where people were empowered to make their own decisions, to gain economic freedom. Precisely what we saw in the decade or two of Canadian Food Grains Bank and ADRA Canada involvement with ADRA Mongolia, where a pastoralist people moved to an understanding of vegetables, growing vegetables, improving their diet, getting the micronutrients that they weren't getting before, and getting the empowerment of having their own food supply. So for me, I'm extremely delighted and proud to be a part of this project, the parallel one in Mongolia, and of course all of our other projects in the countries that you are all representing, where we are able, thank God, to move from relief to development and make a significant impact on the community, change people's perceptions, especially where you've got different religious and ethnic understandings, getting to the place where people trust ADRA, understand that there's a partnership that can make a positive difference in their lives. We have some failures in ADRA. I'm sure all of us could tell some, but I'm delighted to say this is one of our success stories. Thank you.
Thank you, James. It was an interesting remark. We have Sheila from Canadian Food Grain Banks who just joined the meeting. I welcome her. Now I want to take you to a documentary that we have produced from this project. It is a 10-minute documentary. Just a minute.
This is Gagaba village on the western side of Mandera County in Kenya. The women here are busy on their farm, making sure the next harvest is better than the last. A few miles away, Ismail still can't believe how successful his small kitchen garden has turned out. Vegetables are in plenty. Abdiya, on the other hand, is stocking fodder for her livestock. She has enough to last till the next rainy season. Abdi, a member of the Gul Farm self-help group, is inspecting the group farm that is now supplying fruits to the local market in Takaba every week. Abdi has just moved into her newly constructed house, courtesy of this group of women. Everything is looking up. If you came here 10 years ago, you'd find none of these projects. Instead, you'd meet a vulnerable pastoralist community whose livelihoods depended entirely on livestock despite the unfavorable weather patterns. The people of Mandera West sub-county have over the years been severely affected by recurring drought and other multiple disasters, putting them on the greater risk of food insecurity. For the better part of the year, residents not only face food shortage, but also lack pasture for their animals. Abdiya Gallo recalls walking miles and miles to the neighboring country of Ethiopia with over 100 cows in search of pasture, only to return home with 15.
Every time there was drought, we had to migrate with our animals to other places in search of pasture. At times, we were forced to buy fodder from traders in Nairobi and other parts of the country.
Ismail too has been a victim of the unforgiving drought.
We moved with all our animals to Ethiopia hoping to find pasture, but we came back poorer as most of the animals starved to death.
Frequent droughts and flooding have left the community dependent on food relief. ADRA Kenya, with funding from Canadian Food Grains Bank, CFGB, and ADRA Canada, has been changing lives here in Mandera West sub-county through value-added food security interventions. ADRA's humanitarian response in Mandera West sub-county started way back in 2011 with emergency intervention targeting drought-affected population. Over the years, these interventions from ADRA have gradually transitioned from emergency to resilience building.
In 2017, ADRA developed another proposal on the rehabilitation of agricultural rangeland ecosystem. They were targeting 3 areas of intervention, that is kitchen garden, fodder production through FMNR, and they also introduced the component of group saving and loading associations.
Mandera, like most counties in the northeastern part of Kenya, experience little to no rainfall. Water is a scarce commodity here, hence the common perception that the region is not suitable for farming. That notion is slowly fading away for many households after ADRA Kenya introduced the residents to some of the best practices geared towards reducing negative coping strategies while improving food security in the region. Kitchen garden farming is one such intervention that has been well received and implemented by this pastoralist community. We meet Mumina Isaac Hassan working in a small kitchen garden at her home, a routine she has religiously sustained since she was introduced to the kitchen gardening by ADRA Kenya. Her farm will produce enough vegetable for her family use.
Our children are healthier because we have incorporated vegetables in their diet unlike before.
Not far from Mumina's home is Ismail Haji's farm. Ismail is one of the many men in this region that have fully embraced farming as an alternative source of livelihood. Before the introduction of kitchen gardens in this region, Ismail would be busy moving from place to place in search of pasture for his livestock.
When I used to move a lot with my livestock, my children missed out on education. But now things have changed thanks to ADRA. All my family is here, in one place. What more do one ask for?
kitchen gardens have led to a sustainable supply of nutritious fresh vegetables to this pastoralist community of Mandera West.
When you go to a homestead, you will not find a meal without veggies being served. This is one of the changes that ADRA Kenya has brought through kitchen garden.
In the past, our children appeared malnourished and sick, but since they started consuming vegetables, they are healthier.
Now that these households have registered success in kitchen garden farming, many other women are willing to learn so that they too can venture and replicate the success story in kitchen garden farming. One of the major challenges when it comes to large-scale commercial crop production in this region is water shortage. That too is changing. Each passing day, they dig into the arable land and grow all types of crops all year round. For the last 2 years, this farm has provided an alternative source of livelihood to them and their families. Every harvest season has not only guaranteed them food on the table, but money in their pockets as well. This is made possible through the Farm Pond technology, an initiative of ADRA Kenya. ADRA Kenya is keen on expanding key resilience-focused interventions for a complete and sustainable food security cycle in Mandera West.
So this farm pond harvests runoff water, then the runoff water is used for farming vegetables using climate smart technology. Through this technology, production of vegetables going year round, as opposed to the previous years where production of vegetables was only limited to when the rains were available.
Robo Osman, the chairperson of the group, recalls how unbearable life was for women before the introduction of this technology. On any other day, like many other women in the region, she'd be at home, restricted to house chores. But this farm has liberated her, she says.
In the past, we were confined to the kitchen as housewives. As women, we didn't have wealth. We only depended on men. But this farm has made it possible for me to create wealth. I am rich. I need to even start 3 other farms. We used to ask men to give us money for everything. Now, they're the ones asking money from us.
Several kilometers away, we meet Abdi, another beneficiary of the Farm Pond technology. Abdi is a member of the Gul Farm self-help group in Takaba. The farm has got all kinds of fruit trees. Abdi says the group started in 2013 but experienced a lot of difficulties when they tried to farm due to water shortage. But after the construction of the farm pond and adoption of climate-smart technology, they've seen a big difference. So far, ADRA has constructed 7 farm ponds in Mandera West sub-county. Each pond, when filled up, holds about 250,000 liters of water, enough to irrigate the farms until the next rainy season. Proceeds from these farms have enabled beneficiaries to truly diversify their income. One other challenge facing these pastoralist communities has been shortage of fodder for their animals due to prolonged droughts. In the past, they've had to travel far distances in search of pasture for their livestock. Today, Abdiya is not worried at all about fodder for her livestock, even during dry seasons. She has plenty in store. Abdiya is one of the beneficiaries of the Farmer-Managed Natural Regeneration Program, FMNR, introduced here by ADRA Kenya. ADRA Kenya is helping residents restore degraded land in Takaba and Dandu divisions of Mandera.
We have managed to restore an approximate of 10,000 acres of degraded land, thereby giving beneficiaries an opportunity for more fodder, which in turn would lead to increased milk production.
Kama hangakuwa hii nyasi hii safari hii,
If not for this fodder, all my livestock would be dead by now.
This is Abe Hajo, and this is what used to be her house. This is her new house, which she constructed after receiving a loan from a local savings group. Hajo is a member of this women's savings group in Mandera West and attributes her improved living standards to the group and ADRA Kenya.
This house cost me 800,000 Kenya shillings to build. I borrowed 400,000 from my savings group, which I've managed to repay. I am thankful to ADRA Kenya for empowering women through such groups.
Now, with money in the hands of residents, nothing is going to stop the wheels of development in Mandera West. Group Saving and Loaning Association, commonly known as GSLA, is ADRA's disaster risk reduction intervention that seeks to diversify and improve the quality of life through creation of stable, supportive financial systems for its members. The financial models in place have become the principal empowerment tools promoting loaning and saving. Members are encouraged to take loans for business startups that ultimately help them to be self-reliant. These women now have an opportunity to explore new ways of diversifying their incomes to reduce their vulnerability. The flight of development and change has taken off, and not even the COVID pandemic seems to slow it down. There is so much to show for the last 10 years that ADRA has been on the ground in Mandera West. Yet nothing exceeds the joy of a transformed life.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video. But the story is not over yet. I'm sure Stella and team has a lot to say about the project. So we will now go to the presentation. You can type in your questions if you have any while the presenters are making their presentation. And after the presentation, we'll have about 20 minutes for question and answer session. Stella, please.
Thank you, Sarin, for what you have done so far. I am sure all of us enjoyed the video. And now I'd like to invite Kevin Mugambi to continue with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Stella, and thank you everyone for joining us. So with the interest of time, I think I will get right into the meat of the matter. And if you could kindly, Salil, lead me to the first slide. So I'm going to give an overview of Mandera County. And Mandera is an arid county in the northeastern Kenya. And it borders Somali to the east and Ethiopia to the north. And pastoralist is the main source of livelihood to more than 85% of this population that is made up of the Somali ethnic. And nonetheless, the county is one of the poorest in the country, and it's ranked number 46 out of 47 counties in Kenya. And this is according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics 2016 report, Household Economic Survey. And the county has been shown experience quite high climate variabilities. And this has always been felt through its erratic rainfall patterns, which average at 250 millimeters annually, and high temperatures of up to 39 to 40 degrees Celsius and lows of 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. As such, drought, heat stress, and moisture stress are just some of the conditions that these vulnerable communities go through. Additionally, as has been shown by the video, floods also periodically occur, and as such, these continue to bring ravage to most of the livelihoods of these communities. And also, the community undergoes through rampant environmental degradation, and this, in most instances, results from negative coping strategies, such as the wood fuel, charcoal production, and sustainable grazing, that have always worsened the situation of most community members. And this has, in most instances, led to conflict over the limited resources. However, insecurity in Mandera County is not just from the conflict over the resources, but also arising from terrorism acts that is usually resulting from the Al-Shabaab militias, given that the county borders Somalia. Moving to the next slide. I believe a lot has been mentioned by James, and as alluded by James, ADRA presence in Mandera can be traced way back in 2011, that's like 10 years ago. And through the generous financial support of the CFGB and Mandera Canada, and ADRA Canada, ADRA Kenya carried its first project that was dubbed Mandera West Emergency Project. And as James mentioned, this was a response that was responding to one of the worst drought in East Africa in the last 60 years. And it ran between 2011 to 2013, where in 2013, the project took a different direction and resilience components were introduced. So through the Food for Today and Tomorrow project, the FTTM, the project was able to include resilience that was able to support the full recovery of the members, the community members. But unfortunately, in 2017, another major drought hit the country, and actually it was declared a national emergency by the Kenyan government. And as such, another short response was initiated through the Mandera West Response Initiative. It is in this same year, though, that the Rehabilitation of Agriculture and Rangeland Ecosystem, the REA project, was born. And the project, slightly, different from the rest, had an increased number of resilience intervention that were introduced, and which I'm going to share within the course of the presentation. But just to mention, among them were the group saving and loaning, vegetable gardens, and disaster risk reduction committees. So the project ran from 2017 to March this year. However, it was meant to end in October, but if you all remember the disruption that were brought about by COVID-19, then there was a response that was initiated to support the community participants, and ran through August 2020 to March 2021. So clearly it's evident that, as earlier mentioned, the transition of this project was made possible by an adaptive programming support from the donor who was with us through the resilience journey. So with us here, we can see a flow of the REA project, where intervention areas were farmer managed natural regeneration, kitchen garden, and group saving and loaning association. And with it came two outcomes. One was the immediate outcome that was to increase adoption of the FMNR technology. The project also was to increase the adoption of vegetable gardens, and also the adoption of sustainable disaster risk practices. As the intermediate outcomes, the project aimed at having reduced negative coping mechanisms, also increased household income. There was a need for improved livestock products. Also, the diet diversification among the household was of great need, and improved household food consumption score. So the ultimate goal of the project was to have improved food security. Next slide. So here we have a logical framework that is showing the flow and connections, including the detailed activities. that were employed in achieving the project intermediate and immediate outcomes, as well as the project goal, which I think for the interest of time, we'll have a look at them in the next slide. So as I'd mentioned, we have the farmer managed natural regeneration, and these interventions seek to protect and rehabilitate degraded environments. And this was through encouraging the sprouting of indigenous tree stumps and reseeding with improved palatable grasses. We also had the kitchen garden, and this was aimed at promoting water-saving dryland vegetable farming, and with the key intention of improving nutrition, diet diversification, and income generating. Last but not the least, we had the GSLM, which was all about formation and identification and engagement of pastoralists in identified business opportunity, also referred as the income generating opportunities for sustainable livelihood. So here I will take it back to Stella so that she can take us through the gender. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. As I had said earlier, my name is Stella Wanjao, working with ADRA Kenya. I'm going to speak on gender mainstreaming and participation of women. As documented by World Food Programme, 80% of the food in most developing countries and nearly half of the world's food production is done by women. Yet, women have the greatest limitation in accessing knowledge, skills, resources, and technologies in agriculture. This scenario is not different for Mandera West communities, where ADRA has been implemented project for a number of years, as we have been told. Through the various studies and interactions with the community, ADRA Kenya realized that there were various gender imbalances that could hinder the development of the communities and sustainability of the project if not addressed. So the question is, what are those gender imbalances, or what were those gender constraints? One of them was the lack of involvement of women in decision-making and control of resources at both household and community level, including the design of development intervention. What does that mean? This means that only men owned and controlled the resources. They owned even the women. The women's voices were not heard, their needs were not addressed, and they were not involved in community development. And that brought a lot of lack of development. There was also lack of involvement of women in leadership positions, both at the household level and community level. And this means that the gifts and the talents that women had remained untapped. And as we all know, women have a lot of gifts and talents if they are given a chance. The other constraint was limited access and no control of productive assets, such as livestock and land for women, unless the women who are widowed or single women. There was also lack of self-confidence and limited skills to start and own small businesses enterprise. This was all due to lack of exposure because they were not leaving the house, they didn't have their own money, so there's nothing they could do. There was also limited access to credit, and this was linked to lack of collateral. They didn't have land, they didn't own livestock, so they didn't have any collateral to get loans from any of the formal institutions. So women used to depend on men for any financial support. If a man says no, is a no. So there was little development for women. There was lack of capacity to understand and exploit value chains for sustainable economic profit and access to market. Men had more access to markets information, such as marketplaces, than women due to their mobility. So we could find that the women were restrained a lot and could not do a lot in development of their families. There was limited time to engage in income generating activities for women because of competing reproductive activities. In Mandera, people walk for many kilometers, used to walk for many kilometers to look for water, even from 5 to 20 kilometers. And women and girls were more often entrusted with those most strenuous and prolonged activities, like prolonged domestic activities, like fetching water and firewood. So they could have a whole day just looking for water, firewood, and cooking without any development work. And with the mentioned gender imbalances in mind, ADRA Kenya made a number of considerations as viewed by many of the development organizations. What were those considerations? One of them is women are the main food producers in the world and even in Mandera. Women are income earning farmers. Women are healthy nutrition and care providers. Anybody who is sick at home, the woman takes care of them, takes care of food and health. And women are the partners, women and men are partners in food security and nutrition efforts. So ADRA had to look for a way of involving women in the project because there is no way we could have been successful in our project without women. So to include women as project participants, ADRA had to come up with a selection criteria that provided an entry for women to come up with project intervention and strategies as presented and are still going to be presented by the other presenters. When the project selection was being done to ensure that women were there, we realized that most families are polygamous, and the project targeting was carried out with that in mind. And there were polygamous, a man could be having 4 wives, and there is no way you could target that man with 4 wives, because if each woman has like 10 children, having one man, the owner of the household, the wife, and 40 children, we won't have enough project resources to make any impact in the area. So we had to have that in mind, but at the same time, we didn't want to select the communities ourselves. So the project beneficiaries ourselves. We did this with the community, and the community selected the beneficiaries using a criteria that had been agreed upon by the community, by ADRA and other stakeholders. And the criteria included various factors, like having at least 50% of the beneficiaries being women. And since all the community members agreed, they came up with a number of project beneficiaries they would like to join the project because you couldn't target everybody. So among the 1,000 beneficiaries that we have mentioned, 794 are women, that is 79.4. This was a result of the high mobility of men, with women being more sedentary because of their pastoralism nature. At the same time, only one household in a homestead could be selected because of the polygamous nature. What do I mean by this? That if a man has 4 wives, we select only 1 wife and the family for that particular project so that it can have an impact. The other thing we say that we did is that the women are usually tied so much when it comes to some of the project activities like training. So what we did, we made sure that the training were very conducive by localizing them so that the women don't have to travel a lot to the venue. And we also made the environment favorable that a woman could come with her small child for the training. So in the process, they were able to contribute. And if you can look at those pictures just here, the first one where a man is standing there, it's a woman, not a man. There are some demonstration of the various vegetables that were growing. As Kelvin have talked about kitchen gardens, those are various vegetables being demonstrated. At the same time, there were cooking demonstrations going on. You can see that they were even cooking oil. So we realized that we're training the communities only in the production is not enough. We have to go further and teach them on cooking demonstration, because communities like Mandera, they never used to use vegetables before ADRA came in. They used to say that that is the food for livestock. We had to go ahead another step and make sure that we have shown them how they are cooked so that they appreciate them and start growing. So those are the demonstrations that were being done, and you can see there were a lot of women there because they are the ones in charge of cooking. That is one of their gender roles. Then, and then if you look at the other picture down there, you can see that the women are being trained on how to establish a keyhole garden. So they become involved in training so that the skills that they didn't have, the knowledge that they didn't have, they were able to acquire them and they could go back home and establish their own gardens. Why did we do those considerations? We did those considerations because women, they are food producers, and as we have seen, all those considerations are as per the other development organizations. So what came out, I don't want to go deep into the activities that were done because the other presenters will talk about them, but I just wanted to talk about the outcome. There was increased knowledge, skills, and confidence among women to participate in community decision-making. There was also access to resources and technology to improve their economic and social status, while significantly contributing to overall household security. And these are the main outcome that came out of the project. Thank you. Over to Kelvin.
So thank you very much, Stella, for showcasing how greatly we had gender mainstreaming into the project consideration. So moving forward, I will look at some of the interventions. One, to start us with, will be the farmer managed natural regeneration, which is a low-cost sustainable land restoration technique that is used to combat poverty and hunger amongst poor subsistence farmers, and for our case, the agro-pastoralists. And this is by increasing food resilience as well as climate extremes. And the technique basically involves systematic regeneration, management, and growth of trees and shrubs from felled tree stems, roots, and seedlings. So it's actually amazing how the simple act of pruning can release the untapped energy of deep underground root systems, and that rapidly turn these tree stems that were once felled and shrubs into mature trees in a matter of years, as we saw throughout this project. So the technology, unlike the conventional tree planting schemes, is significantly cheap, and of course, because you already are putting into use the existing stems, and also with a very high survival rate, and this is due to the already existing root system, and especially in our case where water was a very big challenge. So we had to look up to a system that already had a network to reach to the depth of the water table. And in addition to regeneration of these tree stumps, we promoted enrichment planting, and here we used drought resistance grass, such as the Synchros which I know it commonly to be known as the African foxtail. And this was introduced within the FMNR plots. And what this basically did was we created a more sustainable nature-based kind of a solution where the land restoration approach was also able to address the immediate needs of this community, which was through pastoral living. Next slide. Moving to the next slide, there were a number of key strategies that we used to actually roll out this particular technology. And just to mention, these strategies came about from ADRA Kenya's experience in running similar intervention in the lower dryland Eastern Kenya, as well as consultation with the community members. So we actually organized this community into groups, and these common interest groups were the pastoral field schools. And this is the typical farmer field school that you get in the smallholder farming communities. And also we had capacity building, where we built capacity in a participatory manner and a collaborative manner. And just to mention, we used adult learning techniques, as you can see on the pictorial. And through these FMNR concepts, concepts and training were delivered. And more importantly, what we had were exchange visits. So these were kind of where different groups would visit each other just to learn from the other group, the other members, and also acted as one way of motivating the other members. Also, we had grazing management plans, and this was one of the areas where we introduced, concept of herd management and through destocking as one of the, mitigation strategies to the death that most pastoralists had from the drought. Also with the fodder grass that we had within these FMNR plots, we taught them how to preserve it. So we had fodder preservation. And this was done through baling and bulking as one of the conservation techniques. I believe we also, the tool that lady in the video showcased while she was, putting them in that box, that's the baling box. And these also was stored or were put for use during the lean season. And yeah, so moving to the next slide is that about 10,000 acres of rangelands were rehabilitated. And according to a new atlas that is out, reveals that rangelands actually cover, half of the world's land surface. And therefore, what this means is that, they greatly contribute to the carbon storage. Therefore, we kind of approximated that about 17 tons of carbon that is beneath and above the landscape were sequestered. And though no measurements were taken, this was based on an approximation of the C4 plants, that is the Africa, one of them being the African foxtail, which are known to have high root mass, and hence, the sequestration was both above and below. And as such, these plants are known to actually sequester 1.7 metric tons of carbon per acre. So what we did here was we kind of estimated by multiplying the 1.7 metric tons, as the research shows, of the capability of carbon sequestration of these pasturelands to the 10 acres that the project was able to rehabilitate, and that's where we got the 17 tons. And also, apart from the carbon sequestration benefit that can be attached to these 10 acres, we also saw that there was increased production of milk, where 2.9 liters of milk as produced during the normal season was increased to 8.8 liters during the normal season, and where 0.8 liters a day was increased to 5.8 liters a day during the dry season. And of course, this could be attributed to the conserved pasture. Moving next is the GSLA, that is the Group Savings and Loaning Association. And this intervention basically was a financial model that created a self-managed and self-capitalized saving groups. And what this means is that individual members were able to save and lend each other from a kitty, and they were composed of 15 to 25 members for every group. And different from other implementation, there were also a number of strategies that we used. And again, this is based on the experience as we've had in the Lower Eastern Kenya, as well as the project partners and the community members consultation, where we also included the GSLAs to be part of the same PFS groups. And as such, we had a formalization of the groups with the government ministry. And for our case, we used the Ministry of Social Development, where they got their registration. And also, we had to promote capacity development skills, and these skills were such as the entrepreneurship and the financial literacy, where it all included a proper record keeping. Also, what enabled us to achieve much of this success, the next slide, was that we had a continuous monitoring and follow-up where each group had to submit to us their monthly saving records. And so we were able to not just monitor their individual savings, but also the income generating activities. So some of the impact of this particular intervention is that household income grew from 8,533, that is roughly $77 during the baseline, to 11,225, which is roughly $101. And this is slightly higher, just to mention, than the 100 Kenya shillings, that's $100, that most Kenyans, actually half of the Kenyans live, as reported by KNBS. So this cash was not just, it was just enough, to buy basic food items such as flour and sugar, and also with some left over for saving kitty that could be accessed for other household needs. So the next intervention was the vegetable gardens. And a kitchen garden is, you want to view it as a space within one's compound that can be utilized for household nutritional requirement. And this is especially the case of Mandera, where access and affordability of fresh vegetables, spices, as commonly used within the food delicacies and fruits, were a big challenge. And contrary to other parts of the country where we've also implemented this particular intervention, different from Mandera is that meat and milk, was their base, actually form largest of their proportion diet. And we had a number of challenges. I remember, as Madam Stella has mentioned, is that when we were rolling this intervention out, when some of our project staff were on their routine visit, and they came across this village and they saw tomatoes which they started eating, and the community members were really, really astonished, and they would actually ask how that was possible, that they could eat fruits that were eaten by the wild animals. And also the same was done with the fresh vegetables, where the community members claimed that they were food for the goats and the sheep. So this kind of really made it a bit challenging for us, and we had a number of strategies. And one of them, as earlier mentioned by Stella, is that we had cooking demonstration. And this is a utilization kind of demonstration where we showcased how it was indeed possible for them to use it within their delicacies. So otherwise, other strategies were such as the soil nutrient management. Just to mention, there was only one agrovet in Mandera West, so we had to find a way to, encourage the use of agroecological farming and also pest management techniques such as the push and pull. Also, we used the drought tolerant seeds that were actually able to rhyme with the existing climate and the harsh environment. Also, soil and water conservation techniques using technology such as sunken beds were promoted. So basically, the outcomes were that there was an increase in the food consumption score that moved from 18% at baseline to 40.2%. And basically what this means is that most households were able to have more than one meal per day. And there was also diversification that was realized from just the milk and meat animal products to now more vegetable and spices in their diets. Thank you. And moving to the next slide is a presentation that I will welcome my colleague Eric as he summarizes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kelvin and team. My name is Eric Wanga. I would want to talk a bit about the climate smart harvesting. One thing we realized is that most of the interventions in this program really low cost. So from supporting tree stumps that have been cut off to regenerate, to using sacks to grow vegetables, to making a hole on the ground to harvest rainwater for agriculture. So farm pond technology was one such technology that was employed by this project. Is a simple excavation on the ground, which then harvest runoff, because we know when the rain comes in Mandera, it comes heavy, and when it goes completely. So there is need for a rush to harvest this water when it is available and keep it available for future use or for continuous use for agriculture. And the farm pond proved to be one of those successful options. So it's simply an excavation on the ground. It could be rectangular, square, circular, which then has an inlet, outlet, and then the water is stored. You could line it with a clay or plastic or anything. So really, in a nutshell, that is what the farm pond is all about. Just to the next. Yeah, so for this to work, of course, there are certain parameters or certain things that must be in place. So we must have the right institutional framework to help the community structure that will then help to facilitate its establishment. We must have the right technical element or technical design elements that we have to look at. And we must also have the right enterprise to match it out so that you get the best in terms of cost benefit. So in terms of our institutional framework, we worked a lot through inclusive, gender sensitive farmer organizations, which then facilitated extension services, but also the actual service of development of the farm pond. So we had the farmer-to-farmer extension through TOTs. We have the pastoral field schools, which were knowledge transfer institutions. We have the group savings and learning associations, which are also financing and helping the farmers to get the resources. So we worked on skill development to understand how then do we go about constructing, but also linking in terms of acquisition of inputs like the liners, the nets, shade nets for the covering, and also finances for other forms of mechanization. So to understand the technical elements, of course, the farmers have to spend time in understanding their farm details, knowing the flow, the slopes and everything, so that, because this is one thing that is environmentally friendly and therefore should not in itself turn out as an hazard in itself. So there is a lot of time spent in understanding the farm details and also understanding the catchment itself, all the aspects about the flow, the runoff flow, the runoff depth, all this, and as well as environmental impact assessment, looking at how the water comes in before it is stored, how then is it stored, the dynamics within the storage itself, and then how is it abstracted, which in this context, we applied climate smart solar pumping system, how then it goes to the farm and how the excess runoff is utilized and is then put back into the streams or into the other parts of the farm. So in this, we have the household pond protocol application that the ADRA Kenya, together with other partners, have worked together to come up with, and therefore that came in handy in terms of developing this. And then, of course, after this is done, we have to have the right enterprise looking at water use efficiency and also cost benefit analysis. So we looked at the enterprises, the primary enterprises that can work best with the farm pond, including vegetable production, tomato, onion, capsicum, all that high value crops, and also other complementary enterprises such as beekeeping, because we know these are very dry area. And when we talk about beekeeping, for example, the bee depend on water in order for them to produce honey. So when we have a pond, which does not necessarily belong to the people doing the bee, but their bees can go to the pond, get the water, and then you find that it has a multiplier effect of increasing even honey production. So in this, we have the farm pond planner, which is also one of the tools that ADRA Kenya has developed together with the partners. Moving on to the next. Yeah, so with all that put together, we find that there are a number of enterprises that came up. So you can see this is Mandera. These pictures are actually taken in Mandera. You can see how the onions are coming up very well in the farms, and even the cabbages. I think like my colleague was mentioning, this is known to be a high altitude crop that would don't need a vegetable, that would don't well in high altitude, high rainfall area, but then it did so well in Mandera, given the availability of water and the fact and the right timing for cropping. So really, that is one of the key macro intervention that helped escalate and move the vegetable production from simple sack to slightly bigger level scale production. So in this process, we had a few challenges, we had some lessons, and we also will come to share some of the scaling approaches that we can look into. So the one big thing that we know, this project started in 2011, it has transitioned all the way, but we know that when 2019 hit, the COVID-19 pandemic came in, and then there were a number of challenges that came with it. Or we had to reprogram, we had to think, how then do we reorient our thinking, how do we work together with the communities to continue enjoying the benefits that the program had accumulated all the years. So there were a number of things that happened. There was disruption of extension. We had already set up very good extension systems, but of course, with the coming of COVID, people could not meet, people could not sit under the tree as usual and discuss all these things. So there was a lot of challenges in terms of accessing advisory, accessing inputs, because there was a big disruption in the supply chain, and of course, the inputs that were ordinarily available to the farmers through the intervention were now not accessible. Finance, there was challenges with access to finance. There was also the risk of abuse for women when they move to the different, as they do their daily activities. I've talked about the supply chain. The curfews also hindered farm activities, because now the commercial goods could not move from one place to another. So these are things that when we looked at them, we realized that we're going to unroll the gains that were already achieved. So what did we then do? We did a contextual rapid gender analysis, which then helped us redesign and repackage some of the project activities. We also stabilized equitable access to capital through the GSLA. We revitalized the GSLA, but we also provided inputs, specific inputs to the women and men smallholder farmers. And we also promoted remote extension services, because now this is a time that they could not get the conventional extension services. So we came up with remote extension systems, and we also supported the groups with the PPEs, like and other COVID-friendly and the COVID prevention equipments like hand washing and all these other masks and the different, while also sharing COVID messages. So I think this picture would then summarize some of the interventions. So for the shops, the small businesses that had already been developed by the women through the GSLA support, we provided these hand washing facilities for the marketplaces and also for the shops. We also shared COVID messages through posters. But more importantly is that in addition to sharing COVID, extension messages digitally through the SMS, like you can see on the right, we also incorporated COVID awareness messages into this. So when they get information on when to plant, when to prepare the land, they also got information on how to protect themselves and also take care of the just as a precautionary measure. So some of the key lessons that came out in terms of the entire program is that income from selling fodder was a big incentive. So when we started rolling out FMNR as a regeneration process or rangeland management process, there was not clearly immediate incentive for the farmers to manage there. But when they realized that actually once it regenerates, grass come up, and then they were able to sell fodder, provide also to their animals, that became an incentive. So it really helped move the FMNR intervention. And also when it comes to the GSLA and also the pastoral field school, we realized that these groups brought a lot of cohesion in the community, because this gave them opportunities to discuss and also to iron out some of the things which were not necessarily related to the project activities, but which then they now found a platform to share. Of course, the remote extension approach helped, particularly in the context of COVID. And then the vegetable gardens not quite require very complex technology, very simple technologies that the community embraced. And we found this working so well, because when we have had so many programs in which we employ very sophisticated, modern, state-of-the-art technology, but these were very simple, contextually appropriate mechanisms which then work. And also, we talk about deliberate targeting, engagement of women and their participation in the different project components. So that really also worked out very well. And one thing we learned, that as the seed, because we gave the first seed for fodder production, and the community were able to multiply and share, and within no time, the entire community now has access. And so in real sense, these are some of the lessons that we realize. Of course, there is also increase in fodder availability, even during the months. But one we noticed that even though fodder was available throughout, because now the regeneration, but farmers still, the pastoralist community still had to move because there was the challenge of water. So one thing that we see as a gap, which also is a learning, is that for effective regeneration and effective intervention, we may probably need to integrate water management, soil and water management, and livestock aspects into it at a bigger scale. Of course, we did try to have that, but maybe having it at a much bigger scale. So I will invite Kelvin, I think, to finalize in the last slide.
Thank you very much, Eric. Just to wrap up is a look at the project sustainability and some of the actions that we had in place to ensure that there was sustainability. And just to mention is that we had a participatory process in the project design, and this was also carried during the implementation and monitoring. And as such, this was done in line with the government line ministries, as well as the community elders. Also, the community resource persons, the TOT, also were closely linked with the government extension services, and as a result, this assured or guarantees that there will be a continued access to extension advisory by the community members, because the TOTs are the same pastoralists or lead farmers who live within them. We also had contextual tailoring of intervention, and what this means is that we ensured that the intervention addressed the real needs of the community, and these were the food insecurity, the lack of fodder, and the poverty amongst the community participants, and more so within women. That's why we had that gender lens. And also we had the kind of a group approach where we did not look the community members in isolation or individual, but we had them in groups such as the PFS and the GSLAs, and as such, this increased the social cohesiveness rather, and as such, gives a guarantee of an increased likelihood of people to work together, not just at the present time, but also in the future. And last but not the least, also we had the GSLA component that involves money, and the ability of these groups, therefore, to avail these resources to its member, either for business or personal needs, provides a financial inclusion option that lacks in the community. And so to mention, by the time ADRA got into Mandera, there was not even a single bank or financial institution. And by the time the project was over, there were negotiations of the Kenya Commercial Bank to actually set up a small branch that will actually serve these people, owing to the fact that then most of our community, the participants had actually registered their groups and had a bank account that was opened with this particular bank that was actually Sharia compliant. Thank you, maybe.
So thank you very much. Thank you, presenters. We all know that it's not easy to tell everything about the project in about half an hour or 45-minute time. You have done a great job. So I'm sure you already have some questions in the chat box. Before going into that, may I request Sila for a brief remark?
Hi, everyone. As you've been told, my name is Sila Kisoso. I work for CFGB. I'm the program officer for this project. And I've been working with ADRA on this project since 2017. Although the project started in 2019, we started doing some food assistance at that time. And we've progressed to this point where we're seeing the community being sustainable. So I want to definitely give my gratitude and thanks to ADRA Canada and ADRA Kenya for their work. Mandera is a vulnerable area, very dry. There's a lot of complex situations in Mandera. And so to come in and to change that narrative, to give people hope, to give people the opportunity to grow their own food and to be sustainable is a powerful thing. And we have also seen the way conservation can be a key way to discover, to basically combat the issues of climate change. In Mandera, we had a trip, I think in 2018, and it's basically a desert. There's nothing but empty land all over the place. And so for the community to realize the value of the land, if they're able to conserve it, if they're able to tender to it, they'll be able to reap the fruits for their family and for their children, and it will be sustainable in the long run. One thing that I also appreciate with FMNR approach is that it's a low cost but high impact approach. So the community is able to use already what they have. And so we only have to contribute and support them and guide them through the process. But really, they come to the realization that they can actually make great use of what they already have, even though it's a desert. Gender is also a key outcome of this project. And I think ADRA did a really great job, really amazing job. We had the opportunity to meet the women of Mashallah, is it Mashallah? Women's group, Gul, and the savings group, and the level of empowerment that these women have had through this project, and through the realization of their hard work, basically just tendering to their land, taking care of it. It has been able to show them that they can be able to make profitable yields. And I remember also when we were making when we were visiting Mandera, we were walking, through the land, and we came across a carcass. And the tummy was just full of plastic bags. And so that's basically the situation that we were walking into. As a pastoralist community, there was not opportunity for the cattle to have food. And so through the fodder activities and through the conservation, they're able to produce for their cattle and also sell. And I believe there's one group that had made in 2018 had made about $1,500 just from fodder. And so through conservation, they are also able to do the beekeeping activities and so many other things. And also the spontaneous adaptation that has happened, which we also measured on this project. So for me, I just want to give my thanks to ADRA Kenya for their hard work on this project for the last 10 years. We've been working and doing food assistance and then moving to food security activities for the last 6 years. We can definitely see the fruits. This has been the first FMNR project for CFGB. So it has also taught us a lot of things and also the possibilities. We currently have another partner through Mennonite Central Committee of Canada, who are now using FMNR out in Kibwezi and Mweni and what is it called? Kibwezi and oh my God, I forgot the other, and it's my country, I should know this. It's escaped me. It's right there, but it's not coming out. But it's in the eastern part of Kenya. So just Makueni. Thank you, Kelvin. Yeah. Yes. So we really thank ADRA for their leadership in this work through FMNR, through conservation, showing us that it's possible, and really being true leaders, even in our network in FMNR work. So my thanks goes to you, and it's great to hear all the voices that we have been chatting with over the last 3 years or so since I joined CFGB. So congratulations for all the great work, and we look forward to continuing working in such difficult areas and hoping for outcomes like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for these remarks and also encouraging us to find alternatives all the time. Thank you so much. So now, may I request Avis to say a few words? Avis works for ADRA Canada, and he is also a witness to this journey from 2011.
Thank you, Salilji. I just wanted to thank the team for their perseverance and their patience and their excellent work in Mandera. It's a very, very difficult context. And I also really appreciate our Canadian Food Grains Bank, our donor. They are our true partners. It's not like other donors wherein it's it's a top-down approach, but it's a true partner who understands the need and allows us to adapt to the project needs and the fantastic modality they have. We intervene with emergency, and there is funding pot to build up from the emergency, moving into early recovery and then into development. So that kind of funding modality has actually enabled us, ADRA Canada, with ADRA Kenya, to implement this amazing program. So once again, thank you, the whole team, for this awesome journey we've had for almost 11 years. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Abhishek. So I have some questions in the chat box. Let me just read through it, and Stella and team, you can respond. So we have a questions from Alan from ADRA Bangladesh. How long did it take to make the change? Stella, Eric, and Kelvin.
Well, they're thinking I can give a preliminary answer, and that is that's been the whole life of the program since 2011. It's been a gradual building of technologies, building of relationships. So it's not just a one-off thing. There have been little successes here and there, but it's the complete building of everything on each other, which is back to my earlier plea that one of the things that kills us in ADRA is short-term funding, and long-term funding allows us to make genuine differences. Thank you.
Thanks, James, for that response. We have a questions from Tayo. I guess he's from ADRA Afro. Did any of the benefiting partners experience incidents of cattle rustling as it has been in some part of the country? If yes, how did you deal with it?
Thank you, Cyril. I think I've already answered that. We have not had incidences of cattle rustling, but we have incidences of terrorism. Thank you.
Yes, and just to add that is that cattle rustling is, interclan conflict rather was the main issue that happened before we came in, and this is where pastoralists were fighting over for pastures. But as earlier mentioned, we had numerous training in line with our partners from the government to train on the grazing land management as well as.
Thank you, Kelvin. Then we have a question from Tayo again. How did you deal with the clan conflicts? It could be damaging to the program if not stopped.
Salil, actually it was answered and Kevin just also handled it. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think there is already a response from Stella on that. Then there is a question on market link. Have you done any activities for market linkage? So I can see Stella answering to that question again. So probably you might have seen in the chat box, we had some market links for both vegetables and fodder, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, and I also added that our main objective of the project, it was not mainly marketing. It was production at the household level because of the scarcity that was there. So marketing was just secondary.
Thank you, Stella. There is another question from Wendell. Just curious of what technological tool you used for pasture management.
So for pasture management, we used indigenous knowledge, and this was basically because of the sensitivity of the matter, and we had to engage the elders, the local elders, so as we could understand how this was carried out, years before, and from there we used that knowledge and came about with a rotational grazing kind of a pattern, where the communal grazing lands were divided into sections, and each section, each of the representative, each elder representing the villages actually had to inform their his community members on where to graze their animals for that particular week. This was based on an agreement that all the elders had sat and agreed. So we had a rotational grazing sort of approach, and this was also supported with the local administration, where any of animals that were seen outside these agreed zones were actually summoned so that they would preserve these unutilized areas as the drought was, as the days of the drought were going forward. So yeah, we used kind of an indigenous knowledge to come up with the grazing plans.
Thank you, Kelvin, thank you, Kelvin, for answering that. That question actually is quite relevant in the newest project that we have here. By the way, I'm Wendell. I'm from ADRA, Mongolia, and we have a new project called PLUS, Pastureland Use It Sustainably. We're working with ADRA's Regeneration, and we'll be tying up with Savory Institute, which will be using the holistic management approach. And I'm just curious of how it is related and similar in terms of intervention. But yeah, thank you, Kelvin.
Also, thank you very much, and that is good to know, because as we might have been limited to have such